Hello everyone, welcome to this panel. The topic of today's panel is innovative platforms for multi-stakeholders processes to foster sustainable cities. My name is Victor Mulas. I'm Senior Program Officer of Innovation Labs at the World Bank. And at the bank we work a lot with cities, helping them becoming more efficient, to provide better services for citizens and to use the technology to do that. And the topic today, I think it's very interesting because technology is allowing citizens to be more collaborative and be more participatory in their processes. And it is allowing to actually interact directly with citizens and all other stakeholders. Today we have a very rich panel. It's very varied. But it's very interesting because it will bring us examples of different platforms that are allowed by technology, which allow for these interactions, these 4 Ps that includes also people and citizens, which is something that is new in these processes. Well, not so new, but new historically. And we are going to have examples that go from a city in itself to a country, that goes from pure technology and collaboration in standards to practical examples of how the city can use these platforms. So we're going to start with Geoff Snelson. Is the first speaker. He's Director of Strategy at Milton Keynes Council. And your management responsibilities include corporate strategy, performance communications, and external relationships. So Geoff, if you want to start.
Thank you, and good morning. So I'm Geoff Snelson. I'm Director of Strategy at Milton Keynes Council, and I lead something we call our Future Cities programme, which is a whole range of innovation projects that are designed to address city challenges around infrastructure, citizen value, and innovation. And at the heart of that is something called the MK Smart project, which is a city-scale data hub that has been designed and built in collaboration between an academic, a commercial, and a public sector partner. So that's BT, British Telecom, is the commercial partner, the Open University is the academic partner, and the City Council, Milton Keynes City Council, is the other. And that data hub allows, as other typical data hubs do, the agglomeration of data from multiple city systems. The council publishes open data into that hub, but it also allows commercial collaborations under closed conditions. The hub also has an innovation layer and a bespoke innovation environment where small and medium-sized enterprises can work in practice and develop new applications. And the environment has got very easy-to-use developer tools, very easy access to data. The hub can also provide a commercial service layer as well. That's not an operation at the moment, but it will allow eventually people to operate a marketplace in data as people start to realize the value of the data in their solutions. So that data hub sits within a city-scale innovation environment, which also includes a low-power wide area network to allow the deployment of sensors at scale across the city in multiple use cases. And I think particularly interesting in the context of this topic, there's a citizen innovation work stream. So we run a series of citizen labs to identify challenges and to work through whether data and technology can play a part in addressing those challenges. And there's a fund which provides the ability to actually develop applications to address the best ideas. And alongside that is a website called OURMK, in case you want to look it up, which is a citizen innovation platform where people can post their best ideas, and there's an opportunity for other collaborators to come and get involved in that. So broadly, I hope I've described to you and you've understood, we've developed a citywide sort of collaboration environment with multiple stakeholders, both addressing citizen, commercial and higher education interests, where new solutions can be developed. And just 2 examples of the sorts of solutions I'm talking about. One is a city motion map, which is a real-time view of both pedestrian and transportation movement across the city, which is being integrated with timetables and other travel information so that people can have a real-time view of transportation. They can have an application which gives them a route planner to get the best journey on that day according to the conditions, and they can also ultimately choose and book a solution. So that requires a whole range of different players to come together and provide data. And the second application uses data from satellites, high resolution imagery, combined with planning information held by the City Council. And we have developed a planning enforcement app on the back of that, so we can see where buildings are being built and whether people are building buildings where they shouldn't be. So a couple of practical examples of things that are emerging from the overall innovation environment. So be happy to answer some questions later, but I'll stop there and let the next speaker carry on.
Well, thank you very much. That was an interesting view of how you use an open data platform with the practicalities of that. The next speaker is going to be Mr. Juanjo Hierro. He's CTO in the unit at Telefónica, in charge of the development of Telefónica's Internet of Things and Smart Cities platforms. But he's also the coordinator and chief architect of Fireware, the open source platform for smart city standards. So please, Juanjo.
Do we have the slides that that I prepared that can be shown, or should I go there? Do you know? Is this in the computer? Okay. And then should I click somewhere or? Play. Play. Yeah. Good. All right. Okay. Thank you very much for being here. I'm going to introduce you Fireware. We have been talking about innovation in smart cities. And the very concept of innovation nowadays in ICT is very much related with, first of all, creating an ecosystem, sustainable ecosystem, and the notion of platform. So Fireware is really building around these two concepts and trying to create a sustainable ecosystem. And I would like to go through the different pillars of how we aim to achieve sustainability of the initiative, which maps to the different programs that we have developed within Fireware. First is the platform. You cannot build really a sustainable ecosystem boosting innovation without standards. And that is our main mission, bringing standards, de facto standards, backed by an open source reference implementation that cities can adopt to boost innovation around the city, boosting creation of smart applications, not only by the cities, but by third parties, entrepreneurs that can leverage on data and information that the city can bring and publish. Second pillar is you need to create a meeting point that can attract entrepreneurs to showcase their applications using your data. And that is what we are trying to create with the Fireware Lab. A standing environment with data centers all over the globe, bringing the capacity on the cloud that allows entrepreneurs to create their applications and showcase them. A third aspect is that you need to be global. There is no ecosystem that a city can build alone. We have to really work together in trying to create a market that makes sustainable the investment by entrepreneurs, solution integrators, and so on. And that's why we have the Fireware Mundus program, trying to spread the word around the world, trying to engage new cities in this venture. Last but not least, you have to also boost entrepreneurs, and that's why we have the Fireware Accelerator program. That is about helping entrepreneurs to get that initial funding, connecting them to accelerators programs that could help them to create applications using the technology with data of the cities, and be able to think global but act locally. And that's why we are developing our network of iHubs nodes, which is about creating small communities of people supporting entrepreneurs and developers locally to create applications using Fireware. Okay, so small figures about the Fireware accelerator program that we run in Europe, and now we are boosting in other places around the globe. We were able to attract almost 10,000 startups, SMEs that apply to the program. 800 of them have been selected. These figures came from August, so they have increased a little bit. And 60% of the teams have even less than 5 years of experience. So really is about helping them to develop their business. And yeah, some of them are just looking for the half of capital that they would allow to fund their initiatives. And very nice stories are now emerging around the program. First, reach to target customers, SMEs and startups that are raising investment from venture capital. All of these kind of things are emerging around the Fireware ecosystem that we have been able to build. Of course, this ecosystem, in the particular case of the cities, will not be able to fly without the participation of cities. And because of that, I'm proud to talk a little bit about the Open and Agile Smart Cities initiative. What is this? Is an initiative taken by a number of cities which have decided to take action and adopt a number of de facto standards for really creating the kind of market that will boost creation of applications that can be developed once for multiple cities. More than 60 cities are already being part of this initiative, embracing a number of standards, one of them Fireware and GSI, which has to do with bringing real-time access to information about what's going on in the city. And I just want to close my speech with an invitation to you to attend the announcement of the third wave of cities that will take place tomorrow at 9 o'clock in the UK pavilion, where 75 cities will be there announcing they are pushing for the adoption of standards and the creation of this innovation ecosystem. Thank you.
Sorry about that. We only have 2 microphones. So thank you very much for this overview of such a wide platform that it's allied with an initiative and so many cities. So our next speaker is going to be Raul Gonzalez, and I think he's bringing a different perspective. He's responsible for strategic marketing from Cellnex Telecom. Cellnex develops smart city projects that optimize smart city networks. They have Internet of Things, and it has a different perspective coming from an infrastructure kind of platform that can help us understanding also how can we use these into bringing all the stakeholders together.
Hello, good morning. 4 years ago, we saw several trends. One of those, it was co-creation, and the other one, it was share. With that trends, we tried to find the way to apply in smart cities, how the cities can collaborate between them, how the cities can collaborate with the stakeholders in the city, and how this collaboration and share this data and information could help to co-create services. That was the initial thing that we had with several cities, and we start a European project called iCitie that we finished yesterday, where we try to push these kind of things. We create a common platform between the different cities. That platform makes possible to access of each one of the information systems of each one of the cities. In that case, Barcelona, Bologna, Genova, and originally London, and it was adopted for 4 more cities. In order to access to that information systems of each one of the cities and share these data streams that produce that information systems with the other stakeholders in the world, using a common API to access to them. That makes easier the access to different services and try to push one aggregate demand on that. At the end of that, the intention it was to create services, public interest services with the citizens. I want to explain you our experience and what are the conclusions about that. Basically in co-creation, in apps development and governance. It was very interesting because we saw that related to co-creation, that there exists an interest to do that, but the level of each one of the cities to promote this kind of co-creation services are quite different in each one of the cities, and sometimes makes difficult to start this kind of co-creation services. Develop this open innovation system sometimes it's difficult to understand for the people that can use these platforms to create and generate these new services, and probably it's too innovative now, and it's just some kind of push to learn to make that the people understand what it's possible to do, and the potential of innovation and co-creation process of processes. It's very big. That was interesting for us because at the beginning of the project we focus all our strategy on attract developers, but it was difficult to explain what can they do with that. They saw that exists a potential, but it's necessary to have a good methodology, a good approach to them, learn them how they can improve the results. If we talk about how the platform it was, the number of apps that it was developed using this approach, it was lower than we hoped at the beginning of the project. At the beginning of the project, we thought that we will achieve a lot of different applications when we combine the data that come from different stakeholders and share between them in order to create new services. But at the end of the project, we saw that it was difficult to engage those developers to create these new services. It's quite difficult if you don't have any kind of engagement with the end user. And that's one lesson that it's necessary to take in account when we talk about these kind of ecosystems. Sometimes we lose the perspective of the end user to develop these kind of services, and more of them, at the end, it doesn't work. They have a good apps, but the problem is that don't arrive to the end user. We saw that there are several areas where they have a lot of interest for the people. That it was environment and mobility, and that could be a good initial for the continuity of that kind of projects. We saw that exists a potential to use this kind of collaboration, but it was interesting for us that we saw at the end of the project unexpected results. We at the beginning thought that the citizens could be the people that it could be more interesting in this kind of results, of solution, or the final destiny of the users, of the apps. But at the end we saw that the private companies, have more interest to do things with that, and they have in their mind at the end the final user. That's a different approach that we didn't expect it, and it was a surprise for us. And it's a good way at the end to understand, or to start with a new line of things related to that. The other important thing in that case, it was in that all the cities share one common platform, but at the same time, they share experience, they share cost, they share ways to address to the citizen, they share a lot of experience that it was, at the end, very good for each one of the cities. With collaboration, what we can show is that the innovation is pushed and go ahead. Okay. Now, at the end of the project, that it was finished yesterday, all the participants are aimed to continue with the project and share the experience with the rest of the cities of Europe and private companies and developers and citizens in order to try to change or create new public interest services and experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speakers are Dr. Olga Kordas and David Lazarevic. They come from KTH Royal Institute of Technology, and they're going to give us a different perspective, a more national perspective, with the strategy for sustainable cities for Sweden.
Yeah. I'm not sure how it works. Something probably would come up. No. Yeah. Okay. So we are doing it without presentation. Doesn't work. Okay. So presentation doesn't work, but we are well prepared. Yeah, it's doing something. Yeah, so we have a long time for presentations. That's why we decided to share the presentation with my colleague, David Lazarevic. We are coming from the Royal Institute of Technology from Stockholm, and we are the largest technical university of the country. I'm a director of the energy platform, where we are connecting more than 500 researchers in the energy field, and they are from energy technology to social scientists. So our platform has got tasks from the National Energy Agency and from Vinnova, which is the innovation agency of Sweden, to design strategic innovation agenda for smart, sustainable cities. So I have some brochures as a result of this work, so you could pick them up from us after the session. So our task was to bring together important actors in the smart, sustainable city area in Sweden, and also to formulate research, innovation, demonstration, and also institutional supporting projects. What should we do in order to make Swedish cities as a role models for smart, sustainable cities? And what should we do in order to generate more growth in the sector of smart, sustainable cities in Sweden? We've done that with using a so-called quadruple helix approach. Yeah, you see, so now it works. I have a chance to show you quadruple helix approach then? No way. Okay. So, okay. And the quadruple helix approach is basically to bring together academic partners and also public partners, which would be on the local, regional, and national level, and also, of course, industries. And then the fourth part, which is extremely important, is civil society. Yeah, so this is kind of coming up. So now we have triple helix. Yeah. No. So. Yeah, this would be something which is. Yeah. Yes. So this that's basically. I'm afraid of doing anything now. Yeah. Yeah. So this is quadruple helix, and the civil society in the quadruple helix is important because empowering stakeholders, empowering citizens, and is also, and citizen engagement is really focus of our agenda. So we managed to bring together very powerful consortium. You can see we have three largest cities of Sweden is Malmö, Stockholm and Gothenburg. We also have Kalmar as a representative of a small city because, of course, small and large cities, they have different problems and different possibilities and resources. We have academic partners as universities and research institutes. We have industries from different sectors, from ICT, from appliances development, also construction companies and housing companies, and we have a bunch of NGOs and citizen initiatives. And of course, it's very challenging to bring these people together and also to formulate agenda and research and innovation goals together. And maybe, David, you could elaborate on that.
Yep. So the way what we did is we brought a lot of actors, all these actors together, basically in several co-creation workshops, which lasted over about a year. And the first thing was to try and figure out how we can come together around a goal and a guiding vision of what the smart, sustainable cities would be like for Swedish cities in 2050. And a part of that process, we tried to develop pathways towards this future vision. And because it was very complex, we've got lots of different actors, we tried to coordinate and structure this innovation agenda around several different themes. So first we got actors to come to some type of consensus around what are the different global trends and challenges facing Swedish cities. And then we tried to turn these challenges into different opportunities in 4 specific sectors to do with empowered citizens, sustainable districts in the built environment, sustainable urban mobility, and integrated infrastructure. And then we got the actors and stakeholders to come together and identify different obstacles preventing these opportunities from being realized. And then one key approach in the agenda was to structure the research and innovation activities, which would be focused on these global trends and challenges, and also supporting and coordination activities, which would be focused at overcoming the obstacles and steering structural change. So there's more detail about this if you want to either pick up the agenda or go to smartsustainablecities.se. But one of the greatest challenges in coming together was really in discussing innovation with all these diverse actors was what actually is innovation, because it means something very different to each actor. So we had different people envisaging innovation at the product level or the service offering, which was more incremental innovation, so improving the efficiency of systems, for instance. People discussing social innovation, and then also actors bringing up this idea of system innovations, which is radical innovations which try and change the way a societal function is offered. So, for instance, if we think of mobility, we had different ideas for innovation activities in improving the efficiency of, say, vehicle transportation, as opposed to actors which were really looking at changing the whole idea of mobility, working from home and using applications to actually imagining how we can be virtually mobile rather than physical mobility. So that was one of the key challenges, is actually how do we think about innovation with such a broad actor context. And finally, I could just say a few words about why specifically Sweden we're doing this, because we think that Sweden's actually a really interesting and exciting country to be looking in the area of smart, sustainable cities. Sweden actually has the fastest population growth in Europe, and especially if we look at the urban concentration, currently 86% of Swedes live in urban areas, which is forecast to grow to 90% by 2050. Also, Stockholm is the fastest growing city in Europe currently. Sweden also has very high environmental targets and environmental awareness. There is a set of 16 Swedish environmental objectives, and the Swedish government's actually put some urgency on these environmental objectives, saying that they should be met within 1 generation. We also have a number of actual Swedish cities and urban districts, which are some of the forerunners in terms of eco-city development. We have the famous Hammarby Sjöstad in Stockholm, now the new Stockholm Royal Seaport, and also Western Harbour in Malmö. So there's a lot of eco-city development going on in Sweden, which we think we could couple with smart sustainable cities, basically. One other point I'll highlight is that Sweden actually has very good high-quality infrastructure and built environment. So there is basically a lot of capacity in the grid to connect sort of small micro-generation, which we see as one of the main Swedish strengths in terms of smart sustainable cities.
Now we double up, finally. Yes. So thank you. It's very interesting perspective to have the country approach. Now we're going to go back to cities themselves. Our next speaker is Mrs. Edna Pasher. She comes from Israel. She's a faculty member of Adelphi University, Hebrew University in Jerusalem, and Tel Aviv University. That's a lot of universities, so you really know a lot. And she's going to bring the example of Haifa. If please go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like to invite Mrs. Orly Gaffney. She is from the city of Haifa. She runs the program that we are going to tell you about. Now I'm going to try to see if I can find our כן, איפה אנחנו נגיע לזה? הנה, מחברים לנו. Technology has a long way to go yet, as you can all see. Is anybody taking care of that? דובי, אתה יכול לעזור לי מכאן? הם מטפלים בזה. הגיעו. עלה? הנה, זה למטה. אני רואה את זה. Great. We have it. Okay. So the two of us came to tell you a story. The first slide tells the bottom line. It was okay. למה זה לא נפתח?
לחיצה אחת מיותרת כאן.
הנה, אני לא נגעתי בשום דבר.
איפה העכבר?
אתה רואה את זה כאן? הם גם מטפלים בזה, למטה זה נמצא. אתה רואה מל"ל שם?
כן, הנה הם עושים.
הנה.
עכשיו זה יעלה.
מה? הוא פתח קודם גם.
עשו לחיצה מיותרת.
מה? Okay, while it's coming up, let's try to do something simultaneously. As I said, technology has a long way to go, and my personal belief is that culture comes before technology. I have been doing knowledge management and innovation management for many years, and what I found out that many of these platforms stay very lonely and very sad because before we connect things, Internet of Things, first we need to connect people, and people do not always want to connect. Now, the challenge that we are going to tell you about is in the area that it is a shame that we don't connect to each other. It's the area of education, because the people who pay the price for the lack of connectivity between all the stakeholders involved in raising our kids are the kids themselves. So the first slide is that smart education is, first of all, culture before technology. And I'll remind you that Peter Drucker said that culture eats strategy for breakfast. So definitely, culture eats technology for breakfast. So first we need to get people connected. What we did in the city of Haifa, we created within 2 years 150 communities of practice. Those of you who are familiar with the concept, this is a concept that emerged in the high tech when the people realized that engineers would like to collaborate, only their bosses don't allow them. So a new form of organization was introduced where people are allowed to self-organize to create communities of practice. So to be honest with you, we first did it in one of the big defense industries in Israel. Then we did it in another big defense industry in Israel. And then we moved it to education. Abba? So it's called Malal. Malal in Hebrew, from birth to adulthood, from the day a child is born till he or she is 18 years old, the whole education system needs to collaborate along the day and along the age. It's impossible that the kindergarten teacher will work alone and the high school teacher will never meet the teachers from the elementary school, etc., etc. And so we created the CAPS, Communities of Practice. Now, what was the challenge? I said something about it. The educational system is very segmental. There is no partnership between parents and teachers. It's unbelievable. I cannot understand it, even as I say it. And the third one is that teachers have limited technological skills. The kids know more about technology than the teachers, and we need to do something about it and to collaborate across it. So the bottom line is that we do not help our children exploit their potential. So here you have the imperatives. First of all, we want to pool resources. We need a lot of resources in order to help a child grow, and we need to get together so that we don't just waste them. The second is that it takes a village to raise a child. That's originally a slogan that comes from Africa. Hillary Clinton kind of adopted it and made it famous, but it really does take a village to raise a child. And the third one, which we believe in, and high tech showed it in communities of practice, is whatever the problem, community is the answer. We can see it all over the world when all the infrastructure is falling apart because of earthquakes or wars or etc. It's only self-organized people who organize into communities that become resilient. We spoke already about it, that we speak about taking care of the children 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, no summer vacation. All of a sudden, nobody takes care of the children in the summer vacation. Orly does not allow that to happen. The other one is the communities of practice. You can see that all stakeholders are engaged in that. It's not easy, but we insist on doing it. And this is how we can really make the whole village raise its children. By the way, the city is divided into smaller areas, geographical areas. If you want to find out more details, this afternoon we are going to have a session on that in the Smart City Plaza. Now, the education system needs to support that. I can tell you that for 4 years, the city of Haifa tried to do it, and they didn't have a proper infrastructure to do it. The concept of communities of practice took it off. For 4 years, they tried to make collaboration between the different stakeholders, but none happened. When we introduced
Edna?
a platform...
2 minutes more.
Okay, thank you very much. I'll collaborate with you as well, no problem. Now, in order for that, you need to teach people 2 skills which they need in order to self-organize into communities of practice. One is entrepreneurship, and the other one is leadership. And we help them understand that everybody can become an entrepreneur and everybody can become a leader. We mostly work with the 150 people who volunteered to lead these communities of practice. You can see some of the pictures here from our work. You can see some of the articles that we published in peer-reviewed journals describing our rationale for our work. We always do it based on some theory. And these are our addresses, and we invite you to come this afternoon to the Smart City Plaza at 3 o'clock. No, at 3:30, I'm sorry, where we are going to do a workshop together and to talk with anybody who will show up, self-organized, around the question of smart education in smart cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Mr. Paul Wilson. Paul is the managing director of Bristol is Open. It's a city-scale digital research infrastructure for smart city solutions. Paul, the floor is yours.
Thanks. It would be great to have some slides called Bristol is Open on the screen. And I thought it was a great idea to take the whole city, make everything rely on technology, and see how life would get better if we did that. And this morning is perhaps an example of what might happen as we do that. It's great to listen to Wanho talking about Fireware, because Bristol is one of the cities that tomorrow will be announced as partnering up with Fireware. And I think it's right what you said about creating a marketplace that has standards, so that actually rather than everybody doing their own thing one by one, we have something which is scalable, because we're at the start of something very important, but we need to have some commonality, otherwise it cannot scale. And in a minute, it'd be lovely if these slides arrive. But I'm going to tell you about a digital infrastructure that is growing. Look at that, as if amazing. I'm going to talk about a digital infrastructure that we've built in Bristol. So knowing that there's smart everything happening, smart bins, smart toilets, smart lights, smart, we realized that what we needed was a platform that could manage all of the connected devices more than actually just have a smart this and that. And so at the very start of what we've been doing in Bristol, we've built a digital infrastructure which includes fiber under the ground, which you can see in the red line, which is a very high data rate, 144 core fiber under the street. And that's because the city owns the ducting under the street. We've also added an experimental wireless mile through the middle of our town, which does 3G, 4G, and even 5G experimental wireless connectivity. And we've added a mesh network across the street using 1,500 lampposts. That creates a fairly low data rate mesh across the whole city to create an IoT canopy across the whole city. And that whole network is controlled in software called something you call a software-defined network, which is a big innovation in the way that you manage networks. So now you can provide connectivity across the whole city on demand, and the network flexes based on whether there's high-definition media coming over the network or whether there's low-level data coming off a building about the environmental health of that particular building. And all of these networks work together into something that we call the City Operating System, which is hosted up at the University of Bristol and is sits on a high-performance computer so that we can gather data from across the city in real time. Bristol is Open is a joint venture between the City of Bristol and Bristol University, and the university is leading on all the technology aspects. So it includes maybe like a fireware integration or playing around with how cloud and edge computing might work. And the city's looking at why would you do this? What's the point of all of this technology? And I guess our first discovery was we needed a lot more connectivity than we could get if we just relied on the conventional telco environment. So we built ourselves a digital testbed to try and innovate on all sorts of connected devices. Tomorrow night we'll launch something that we call the Bristol Data Dome. So we've upgraded the Science Centre's planetarium in Bristol to be a 4K high-resolution data dome, which displays 2.1 billion pixels per second. So it's a very high projection rate, connected to the network, connected to the high-performance computer. So now we can gather data from across sensors across the city, display them on a 3D map of the city, and see in real time all sorts of data that is happening in the city, be it the transport situation, be it air quality, be it different noise or pollution environments that are going on across the city. And tomorrow night we launch that actually with Rolls-Royce engines, who are using this environment to display data from airplane engines, environmentally friendly new airplane engines. We also have game makers who are using this environment to play 3D games with each other, where you have 100 player games happening at the same time in the city, using data from across the city to play a game of control of who runs Bristol. Then over the next 2 years, we roll this infrastructure out across the wider city region. So this is now an area that's about 40 miles square by 15 miles high, and it includes 4 universities and 4 local authority areas, and a population of about 1.1 million people. And it creates a big city-scale innovation environment. And then on top of the network itself, we start to run different experiments, working with businesses, academics, and the local community. And some of those include, at the moment, driverless cars experiments, assisted living houses for the elderly, where the house is turned into a big IoT environment, and all sorts of data is gathered off the house, and comes back to care workers who now know which elderly person to care for first. And we also like to muck about a lot in the city, playing digital games. So rather than this be about CCTV and more spying from the government or the telco environment, how could we use this technology to make cities fun, playable, and get people out working together in the city? And we have a whole program called Playable City, which does that. So if you put our story together, you have a very plugged in city at the bottom with all sorts of devices and ways of connecting up on the streets, which is gathering data and becomes programmable. A very innovative data transport layer using software-defined networks and network function virtualization linked to the high-performance computer at the university, and you can actually re-engineer the network on the fly to change the topology of the network so that you can make this like any other cities network or any other environments network using a network emulator, and then have programs on top or algorithmic software that actually allows things to happen using slices of this network to do programmable work in the city, things as conventional as street lights or traffic light management, down to things that are actually much more complex and sophisticated over time. And that's what we're up to in Bristol.
Well, thank you very much. That was a very wide sort of topics that gave us very good perspectives. I would like to ask for questions from the public. I will start with some questions, but please start thinking about them if you have any, and let us know as soon as you have them. You can align, yes. So you can get in line there, so we know how many are there and we can manage them. But I wanted to give the opportunity to Geoff, and also Paul, if you want, because you have kind of an interesting perspective. I was thinking when the two of you were talking, this works very well to support the government of the city, and it's kind of a top-down also view of how you support the services that are going to come from the city and make them more efficient. How do you guys also bring the bottom-up approach? How do you try to engage the citizen for them to kind of give you ideas to design things or create new services or new demand? Maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, thanks. I guess one of the things I could perhaps have stressed a little more fully in my brief presentation was just the importance of developing a collaborative culture in the city, because the technology clearly is only a means to an end. And I think the main role of the city and people like myself in cities is about providing that connectivity between people who have solutions, but people who own problems or are seeking new ways of adding value to their lives or enriching their lives. So whilst I appreciate that there has been a bit of a top-down perspective, really, I think the very best cities are about providing that collaboration, enablement, and putting in place the right sort of ecosystem, and then providing access to citizens and businesses to that ecosystem. And as I mentioned earlier, the sorts of things we've been doing in the city is providing workshop-type environments where citizens can get together with technology providers, academics, and have very sort of rich and diverse discussions about their challenges, things that they think they'd like to see addressed. I mean, for example, I mentioned earlier some of our transportation projects. Well, one of the things that local people are concerned about are some of our cycle paths sometimes go into very dark and difficult parts of the city. So actually having some information about what might be around the corner and what might lie ahead turned out to be quite important to them, and we'd underestimated the importance of that. So giving them data that they can read out on their phones, for example, about what might lie ahead turned out to be very important. So we prioritised putting in place means of capturing that information, which we're just looking at doing now. So as I stress that collaboration, bringing citizens, the problem owners or people who've got challenges together with the solution providers, and spending enough time to develop really insightful and appropriate solutions.
So I have two answers to the question. One is we have a maker lab in Bristol, and that maker lab is in one of the poorest parts of Bristol, and we are beginning to build sensor technology in the maker lab, creating jobs for some of the poorest people in the city. And the sensor technology is designed on the back of community process of discussion about what is it we actually want to sense, rather than it being a centrally led discussion. And then jobs are created actually in the fabrication of the technology, the deployment of it, and the data is open. So we are gathering open data, and the community itself understands what the data is doing. So from the actual why are we doing this, who gets a job and makes a living out of doing this, to what's the point of what we're doing, we've involved some of the poorest parts of the community. So that's one answer. The second answer is the Playable Cities movement has something like over 100,000 people involved in a month-long period when it does its thing. So we might have fun with breaking the lampposts of the city, put in projection environment that creates a shadow a big light on the city as you walk through it. It captures your shadow, and you begin to see your shadow playing past you under a street light, and people are kind of a bit freaked out by that, and then they begin to understand what's going on and they enjoy it. And by the end of a month of doing that, you have over 100,000 people coming to play in the shadows of the streetlights. So that's a big citizenship engagement process. And also to mention the dome is very exciting because it's kind of like a crazy movie experience. And people leave there very excited about the whole nature of gathering data and what you can do in a smart city from a data visualization point of view.
One important thing that we have saw is that it's very difficult to mobilize citizens. They don't understand which is the utility for them to open data, to open infrastructures, these kind of things. And it's necessary to have some kind of training or show them what can they improve in their day-by-day activity with the use of these tools, no? And that's quite difficult to do. Probably one of the things that it's necessary is to understand better which are the real aims of the citizens in order to use this kind of technology. They only look the final result that provide them some kind of developers or some kind of companies or some kind of services, but they don't have in their mind that they can co-create that kind of services with another companies, with developers, with another communities, and that's a key point. It's necessary a period to transform this way to think.
Thank you very much. Were there some questions? Yes, I think if someone can give them the microphones, or if not. No. Yeah. Yes, please.
How much do they want to ask a question?
Yes. Can you introduce yourself when you make the question, please?
Okay. Do you hear me? Yeah. Yeah, I'm living in Barcelona. I'm Didier Grimaldi, and I'm candidate, Ph.D. candidate in smart city. So it's my thesis, smart city. And I have a question for you. It's if one of the city is using the Telefonica freeware platform, how do you, and we talk about citizens' participation, my question to you is how the citizen can learn on this platform, where they can learn, and how they can learn to be able to use this platform and to create services in the city.
Well, the first thing to clarify is that Fireware is not a platform from Telefonica. It's a joint development where there are a lot of partners being involved from many sizes. So we have from big companies like Orange, Atos, Engineering, Telefonica involved, to smaller SMEs, technological SMEs, contributing a very nice piece of technology to the whole platform. So this is one thing that I think is worth highlighting. And well, all the information is on the website, fireware.org, and there is training material. If I were a developer, the first place I would invite you to check is the developers .fireware.org website, where you will find first kind of what we call developers tour guide that will help you in the travel, in the journey, to understand what Fireware is about and how you can start developing software. And there is a lot of information there. And you also, another opportunity is to connect to your iHub local node that may exist, bringing you support locally and running training sessions every now and then. And so there are multiple things. And of course, you can visit us on the Fiverr stand and ask more questions and learn more things about.
Is there any more questions, please?
Yes. My name is Ali Lari. I am from Smart World Dubai. It's a government company. I have actually two questions. I would love to address it to Mr. Paul and Mr. Can you hear me?
Yes,
It's
a
okay?
little closer. Yes.
Yeah. I have two main questions. One I would love to address it to Mr. Paul, and the other one, most probably, maybe I would like to address it to Mr. Raoul. The main questions is I met a lot of technology providers, and they are most of them they are providing platforms. However, what I really noticed that everyone is claiming that they have a complete solution for the smart cities platforms. However, what I really noticed that none of them really have that matured one. So I would like to address these questions. Do you think is there anyone or any technology providers that really have a very matured platform, helping to control the cities?
So I'll happily take payment afterwards from any of the large vendors who would like me to make an endorsement of their platforms. But my view actually is that what we're talking about here is the beginning of something that actually will probably be developing for the next 20 years before we even begin to think it's arrived at maturity. But what we're talking about is so interesting and so exciting. It's the convergence of the ICT industry with the computing industry. And the two will blend together over the next 10, 20 years. As we do that, we apply computing to the very challenges of society itself. And at the moment, the computing industry has largely lived in the business world, really, because that's where the money is. And the telco industry has largely lived in lots of it in a sort of struggling now with the amount of connected devices that we have, struggling to keep up. And actually what we will see is a convergence of the computing industry with the telecom or networks industry to begin to do technology in society in a way that actually will look back at the current era and think it was rather cute. A bit like we now look back at computing 20 years ago and think it was rather cute then. So what we're doing here is the convergence of two big industries that you might think actually work together are now beginning to really grapple together to bring new forms of connectivity out. So anyone who tells you today they've got the complete solution today, well, you know, there are people paid lots of good money to tell you that. But I don't really think that will stand. In 10 years' time, they'll be telling you the same thing. They were telling you it 10 years ago. So, but there's no point in being, you know, critical of that. We're actually just seeing a phenomenal adventure happening here as telco and computing converge to do something useful in society. It's great. But I wouldn't know that we've got to the answer. I think we're more near the start.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. The second question.
I would like to give the opportunity to the other people line up because there are two more, if it's okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Geoff Gama. I'm from Recife, Brazil. We had a project with Bristol, Playable City, and I'm from the University of Federal University of Pernambuco, and we are here for the Smart City app hack. We had an application for the Fiverr platform that's been on the contest. So I have questions for Mr. Paul Wilson and for Mr. Juanjo. It's we over there in Brazil. We have I don't know if you guys heard about. We're facing many problems with politics and corruption and everything. But there is a sector of the society that wants this to happen, but there's a lot of politics involved that that puts obstacles on such initiatives. I would like to know if we can hack. How do you believe that we can hack the system without that much support from city halls? I see that every initiative has the support of the city. So if researchers and entrepreneurs and people that doesn't want to depend on city politics and infrastructure, if we can achieve that. Because like I know many people from my city, for instance, that are eager to make this happen, but we are facing barriers with the politics of these public institutions. I would like to have your advice on this, please. Thanks.
I've just got one quick thing to say, which is I think the work of the Open Data Institute is very interesting in this regard. So opening up data about government is refreshing to put the publicity on what's really going on. And that is the power of the open data movement. And the Open Data Institute is a real bastion of good practice in that. And in America and Europe, opening up data around government is a very good place to start. And information, kind of like water, wants to be free. So it's very hard to control it. And so if you want to address that, first off, I think opening up data is a great place to start.
Yeah. I think that one also instrument that we have to, leverage on is reference examples. I mean, there are cities that are taking the lead and creating the first examples, and that you have to show the other cities that might be more reluctant to explain what are the benefits. And of course, those reference examples will have a bigger impact if they are based on standards that then the cities can find out they can adopt without getting locked in a given vendor strategy or whatever. So I think programs like what we are doing with the Open and Agile Smart Cities initiative is something that could be really instrumental, because it's about cities taking the step and showing others what are the benefits and helping them to get engaged.
Can I just add a quick one? What we are seeing is that the technology that is bottom-up, that these communities of practice, as we told you, 150 are created just in 2 years. What they like, we don't tell them, but what they like is WhatsApp. They all use WhatsApp. And they use WhatsApp because it's simple, because it's free. When they self-organize into a community, right away they use this simple, free technology. I believe that we need to learn from success before we go into very heavy projects of ICT support. Thank you.
Only one thing. There are several citizens' initiatives. For example, Smart Citizen is one of them, where some people develop some kind of sensors and they share this information between them and create apps on the top of that. We have made, for example, in cities, combine this information with information of the city, and the two sources of information are available to create new apps. I think that it's a movement that it comes from different ways, but we need to be flexible on how to share this information and complement it. Probably it depends, there are some cultural aspects sometimes to push these initiatives, but at the end we need to try to find what are the infrastructure that we can use to transfer that information and to share with the rest of the people.
So thank you very much. Unfortunately, we don't have more time for more questions. That was a very excellent panel in terms of giving us a lot of information on how these platforms can be developed and the different approaches. I got some key messages that resonated on me. I think it was really important to see that how can you mix both the perspectives of the city, but also the citizen engagement, and how important it is to bring the ecosystem and that collaboration for this success. I think the point raised here are how to incentivize the citizen. So it's very nice to say we need the citizen to collaborate, but how do we do that in a way that they are really collaborating and giving you what they think and need. I think this organic perspective of bringing communities of practice and that part that is maybe the analog work, that we have to go back to it and bring it into the how technology helps the government to connect with that. And I think that Bristol gave a good approach of how top-down and bottom-up can connect. And then finally, I want to highlight the work of the KTH Institute in Sweden, because that process was very interesting to see how you did a complete co-creation, bringing all the stakeholders. It's very difficult to do that at a national level. It's not very easy, but it's easier at the city level when you're closer to the citizen and the citizen can see the impact of that dialogue. At the national level, it becomes more difficult. And I think you brought a very interesting perspective how you brought everyone together in a successful way. So kudos for that. And with that, the last point, and I want to remember, is also the importance of open standards for collaboration among different cities, because all of these are initiatives that are local, but how do we get the scale to bring the impact on a Bristol or on a Haifa for both of them to understand what has worked there that I can bring into me. So I think that's the other important thing. So with that, we finish the panel. I want to thank very much the speakers for their insights and their exposure. And thank you very much to all the audience for being here.